an educational workshop. It's not intended for legal advice. I mean, I've done a lot of research on the law, and I'm happy to direct you to resources. If there are individual issues that you're experiencing, this really isn't the place where I won't be able to give you any official legal advice, but I can direct you to the Legal Aid of East Tennessee. They have a lot of really fantastic resources online. But today is going to be educational, like what the laws are, how you enforce them. And what you'll find out is that most renters' rights stuff, you don't actually need to be an attorney to enforce your rights. I mean, there's lots and lots of information, and we can have discussions about representing yourself in General Sessions Court. It's really designed to be accessible without an attorney. But just kind of, that's the disclaimer. This is an educational session. So this is just obviously like federal law. Nothing in city law and state law can conflict with state law. Nothing in state law can conflict with federal law. The Fair Housing Act was passed to protect people from discrimination when they're renting, buying, securing financing, and they specifically prohibit discrimination for protected classes. Protected classes are, race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, presence of children. When you're talking about housing rights, a lot of the cases that come out of housing rights, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different types of discrimination, but some of the most common are renting with kids. So it's illegal for a landlord to say, if you have kids, you can't rent here, or sometimes it gets a little bit more in depth. So like if you're going to get custody of children, they threaten to kick you out, or if someone gets pregnant, they won't show a house to you. Or it can be it doesn't have to be they're denying you a house. It can be like, well, they'll offer you a place in a specific building that they allow kids to be in. So if there's any type of the landlord doing strange things like that, that would be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. So what's prohibited under the Fair Housing Act is treating anyone differently. So setting different conditions, also treating people differently as far as the repairs go. There's additional legal protections for any threatening or coercion or intimidation or interference with anyone exercising a fair housing right. So it's baked into the law that if you exercise these rights, you're going to be protected under the law from retaliation. In practice, I mean, I think everyone has had an experience where you think that you're going to, you assert a right that you have, but something fishy starts happening. We'll talk later on about what happens when people start retaliating. But this, in the law, says that they can't retaliate. There's also additional protections under federal law for people with disabilities, reasonable accommodations. What isn't covered under this law are pets. You don't have a federally protected right to have a dog, which I have faced many times. And for example, parking is something that you have to negotiate with the lease. Are there any questions specifically about fair housing? Do you want to talk about your experience? Because one thing that Chattanooga has been doing recently is that they're doing these blind testing. So they'll hire two people of two different races or two different backgrounds. Landlords can deny renting to people based on credit scores, and basically that's it. I mean, they can't deny based on what you look like, what your job is. It comes down to credit scores and how much money you make. So, can you talk a little bit about what's happening here?
Basically, what they do when they send out two different people that have been to the meetings and been to the trainings. And it's really a pretty simple process. You go in, they tell you what apartment you're going to, and they give you kind of a personality, a history. And you don't know what the other person, it might be, like when I went, it might have been a woman with a child, it might have been a person of a different race, but we go in and we tell them we're looking for a one-bedroom apartment, and then of course I walk with a cane and I'm disabled, so there's certain questions they can ask you, and there's certain questions they cannot ask you. And then we look for things. We just go in and you're not looking for an apartment, so you spend an hour talking to them, and you go to the apartment, and then you fill out a report at the end. And you report what questions they ask you, what questions you ask them. So they're comparing those answers, and then they're comparing if the deposits are different for different people. Because like you said, really the only thing they can do is the credit. different. So if they told me that my application fee was going to be $150 and they go somewhere else, it was going to be $450 to try to discourage them from renting there, or, you know, like I said, if they get maybe, not to pick on you because my hair used to be longer than yours, but maybe they wouldn't want to rent to somebody with a ponytail thinking they're going to be a wild partier as opposed to somebody that's, you know, dressed. So they kind of give you a persona that you go in with, and if you've got something like a disability, you use that. So far, the two experiences, the 2 times I've been out, have been really pleasant. Maybe it's because I'm a middle-aged white man, but you know, and we're not the people that decide. We just make the report and turn it into Ms. Jackson at the city, and they do the investigation, and they turn it over to an office in Nashville if it has to be a serious investigation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm really glad that they're doing that, because if there isn't sort of a blind study set up, oftentimes people don't know. I mean, you know, I could go and try to rent an apartment. You know, I'm probably going to experience less discrimination than if I had a child with me. And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily know that someone else isn't getting that. So it's really important. And I think, like, that program is pretty open. I saw some advertisements in it. So if anyone, like, leaves this place and wants to be part of it, is there...
Vanessa Jackson, and she's in the mayor's office downtown, in City Hall.
Yeah.
And they have trainings 3 or 4 times a year. And you just go to the training, and you go to the training, and you sit and have lunch, and they go through basically what you're talking about, and they say, this is, you know, you're not an assessor, you are not the law. You are just there to gather information.
Yeah.
And so anybody's welcome to do it, and they pay you $50 every time you go, and, you know, spend an hour and make $50 and turn in your report.
Make sure housing is fair.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and since I'm a renter and I'm looking for apartments anyway, it's kind of neat to go to different parts of town and see different. You know, they might send you a house, and send you an apartment complex, you never know where you're going.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like, I'm really excited that they're doing that, because I saw other places in Tennessee they've done it. But, so this is something, if you feel like you're being discriminated against, like if somehow outside of this program you're like, wait a second, like something seems fishy. I've tried this place a lot of times, it looks like there's no compartment. What often happens is they'll say that, oh, well, gosh, I'm sorry, we would have rented you to this apartment, but someone just came and took it. So these things continue to happen. The way that you fight Fair Housing Act violations is through HUD. So you can do it online, and you can do it through their regional office. Once you go there, I mean, they ask all of these basic questions, you know, name of the person you're filing a complaint against, date of the alleged violation, short description. Like any federal agency violation, like the forms are pretty easy. Like once you find the form online, it's usually just like your name, what you think happened, and then who did it, when it happened, and then that triggers an investigation by HUD. So it's a pretty simple process to start, and then it creates an investigation.
So do they govern every type of housing?
Yes. So HUD covers everything from public housing, Section 8, and fair, or like normal market housing. So HUD is one of, like, and it's mostly just in this one, because everything that I'm saying today applies to market rate housing, so without Section 8 and without public housing. However, all of these laws that I'm talking about also apply to Section 8 and public housing. Only those categories of housing get additional protections. So, for example, if you are in a Section 8 or public housing, or if someone's in Section 8 or public housing, they have additional rights to organize. Like their rights to organize are protected. There can be no discrimination about organizing. So it's actually, as far as the law goes, you have all of these rights plus some. 1289-2 is actually interesting because it was created to make fair housing a priority in anything that receives federal grants. So like the community development block grants, there's actually an affirmative duty for the entity receiving federal funds to try to make housing more inclusive. I read kind of a long write-up on this. An investigative reporter with ProPublica went into this, and she discovered that it's written in law, but it's never enforced. So there have been suits in other cities that have tried to take it on and have been successful. If anyone's seen Show Me a Hero, that was one of the guy who did The Wire did a short series on building housing complexes in Yonkers. Whatever, it's pretty good, but it's the idea is that it was baked into the law that they have an affirmative duty to further fair housing and they're violating it, and then they can get a court order, but that requires teams of lawyers and things to do, which we'll go on and realize it's not really easy to do when it comes to housing stuff. Okay, so that's the federal stuff. That's everything you'd expect. Tennessee specifically has the Tennessee Landlord and Tenant Act, and this applies to only counties that have 75,000 people in the county according to the 2010 census, which is us. If you live in a rural county that has a very small population, you're not covered by this Landlord-Tenant Act. I get the face too, right? And you're like, why? There's a whole bunch of like common law stuff which overlaps, and you have similar rights if you're in other places. But yeah, no, it's just the state of Tennessee government doing what the state of Tennessee government does. And it ends with this. So in Hamilton County, you're protected by it. And there are kind of 8 main categories that I've broken it up into. Now this thing is long and it's in depth and it covers everything from security deposits to rent rules and all these things. I've picked out some of the main pieces of it and we're going to go through what the state law says, but you know, there's more in there. It's just these are kind of the big ones that the landlords have the duty to do. So, I guess I could just kind of, and it's just like comply with anti-discrimination laws, and I don't even think we're going to talk about that because that's just, you can't violate federal law. It's written again in the state of Tennessee. All those protected class things are pretty clear. State rent rules we'll talk about. That's the idea that they can only charge like on certain times. They can't like give you, we'll go through. And then we have security deposit rules, the duty to provide habitable housing, the duty to prepare a legal written lease or rental agreement. It doesn't necessarily have to be written, but it does have to be legal. They can't make you do legal things. Make legally required disclosures. There are some things that the landlord has to tell you. And there's no retaliation, which we'll talk about that in a bit. And then there's termination and evicting a tenant. I'll be honest, we're not going to go very in depth in that stuff. That could be another 2 hours, and there's a lot on it. There are steps they have to go through, and if they violate any of them, they can be subject to penalties. So when it comes to rent rules, this is covered under a couple different sections of the code. And it's just the basic, tenant can't agree to give up their rights in their lease agreement. It says, you can't say, oh, I agree to not hold the landlord liable if the floor collapses. You can't put that in a lease, which is pretty clear. Rent shall be payable without demand. So this isn't a burden on or an expectation of any renter. You know, you can't go in and say, well, you didn't ask me for rent, so I didn't pay it. It's okay. There's a 5-day grace period before they can charge a late fee. So if your landlord ever tries to charge a late fee for turning your rent in on the 2nd of the month or the 3rd of the month, that's illegal. And any late fee that they do charge can't be more than 10% of your past due amount. So, you know, if you missed a payment or something happens, they can't charge you more than 10%. So that's under state law, and that's something that maybe should do. Yes?
If somebody has, perhaps in this room even, signed away their rights, what would be a good step to take, you know, to rectify that, to deal with that, pass this class?
So if someone signed away their rights, like if there's an illegal part in a tenant agreement, then the way the courts typically read that is they just strike that piece of the agreement, and then they read the agreement as if that piece just wasn't there. So for example, if they say, I'm not going to hold the landlord liable for habitable housing conditions, or you know, you don't have to keep it, or then if something happens, and you go to the landlord and you say, hey, my floor just collapsed. I say that because if you say, hey, our floor just collapsed, you need to come in and fix it, and the landlord says, wait a second, you signed this thing and it says I don't have to. Then you take them to general sessions court. Well, and if it were that severe, it'd actually be a code violation first. But my point is, whatever piece they're trying to tell you that illegal portion of the rental agreement doesn't apply to, that would be what you'd have to wait to have a challenge
And
on.
would that resource that you showed at the beginning of the class be a good place to turn in the event of that hypothetical you just
No,
mentioned?
and that's a good question. So HUD only deals with fair housing and enforcement of rights for protected classes. Everything else is Tennessee General Sessions Court. So that would be local court. You can represent yourself. You don't need to hire an attorney for it. Typically, these housing disputes are like 15 to 30 minutes. I mean, you don't, it's not, they might bring in a
It's not
lawyer,
Law and Order?
but it's not, yeah, it's not law and order. You have to prepare big briefs and do this whole thing. So, yeah.
Say that same situation was occurring and that landlord was not replacing that floor, are you still liable to keep paying the rent, not become out of breach of that contract?
So that, and we'll get to that when it comes to habitable housing, but the short answer is self-eviction. So you have a duty to tell the landlord about the problem. The landlord then, if it is an emergency or if it is a major repair that affects the habitability, so if it makes it impossible to live there, like if your heater goes out in the winter or if you don't have water anymore or something big happens, the floor collapses, then your landlord, you inform the landlord and they don't deal with the situation, then you can inform building inspectors. The long answer though, or the shorter answer is that you go to the court and it's a self-eviction. So you're allowed to break your lease without penalties if the landlord refuses to provide habitable housing. Security deposit rules. These are sort of made in my system. But landlords are terrible about keeping security. Like, has anyone like moved and then not got your security deposit back, even though you've like cleaned the place? With security deposits, we'll go through the law, but usually it's just a simple letter that fixes it. But yeah, it's people don't know enough to enforce the rights. Like, I lost my security deposit when I was moving from North Shore here, which was my first apartment, and I went back and I was like, you're moving and you're busy and you don't want to deal with this, you don't want to fight with the landlord, you're just like, you know what, you just keep it, I'm moving on. But it's not like going back and researching this, I'm like, you know, I could just send a letter and I could have gotten, you know, my $600 back and it would have been worth it. So the Tennessee code provides some things around security deposits. One, there's no limit on how big they can be, which is insane. It doesn't have, typically it's about 1 month of rent, but in theory, as long as it's equally applied, the landlord can choose anything. The landlord also can't keep security deposits for ordinary wear and tear on the rental property. And the next slide kind of has some lists of the difference between ordinary wear and tear and excessive wear and tear, but that's usually where the differences lie. The landlord, just for your own personal information, is required to keep the security deposit in a separate bank account. Like,
Sorry, he can't, like, we can't keep anything for ordinary repair. Not even a fraction of it?
no, they can't. But what happens is the landlord, if you press them on it, they'll itemize things that they think you did. But yeah, ordinary wear and tear, you're fine. So they're required to keep it in a separate bank account. They can't just deposit it and then spend it and say they don't have it anymore. And the landlord must give the tenant must give the landlord a forwarding address when the tenant moves out, and so the landlord knows where to send the security deposit. And of course, if you owe any rent when you move out, the landlord can keep that out of the security deposit, and for any major repairs. But if they don't return your security deposit within 60 days, or if they don't return it within 30 days, you can talk to them and you can get them. But if you don't do anything within 60 days, they get to keep it. So it's like a game. You have 60 days from the day you move out to get your security deposit back. So they have a duty to inform you of all these things in between them, but that's when it, like a year later, you can go back and say, you know, like you really owe me some money. I wish. So here's the difference, like this is written down what ordinary wear and tear is versus excessive damage or excessive use. So if it's a carpet that's worn thin because you're just using it normally as carpet's used, they can't charge you for that. If the curtains are faded because of sun, they can't charge you. If your mini blinds are a little bit dusty, they can't charge you. If the toilet doesn't flush very well because it's never flushed very well, you know, they can't charge you for that. If the thermostat just doesn't work anymore, if there's calcium deposits in it, or if your cabinet doors are warped because of the hot and the cold, if it's anything that you didn't cause, you're not responsible for it. It's just ordinary wear and tear. They can charge you for things that you are responsible for, like cigarette burns and basically anything, broken bathroom tiles, doors off the hinges, pet urine stains, if a refrigerator shelf is broken, if like you just take the blinds out and they're no longer there, or if you like put pictures everywhere or gouges in the wall. Like those are the things that they can itemize out. The way you protect yourself, and I need to practice what I preach, but next time you're in a situation where you're moving, make sure you get pictures of everything when you move in. Like any chips in the bathtub, any of the problems, get pictures before you move in. Because later on, when the landlord says, gosh, this was in pristine condition when I moved in, when that person moved in, you need to have the pictures. And I would suggest emailing them to yourself so that they're time-stamped, and then that way you just don't have to worry about keeping track of them. You're entitled to do a walkthrough inspection before you move in, where if the landlord says, oh, the stove doesn't work, but I'll fix it in a week, get that in writing. One of the things that I didn't print out, but if you're interested, I'll send around papers, everyone give me your email address, but the Legal Aid of East Tennessee has a really great couple of pages talking about when you move in, the things you should do. Do a walk around with your landlord, make sure anything that they promise to do that you get in writing and with a date attached to it. And then when you move out, the landlord's going to give you an option to either they'll do the walkthrough when you're not there, or they'll schedule a time and you can do the walkthrough with them. Always show up to that event. So that in theory is after you've moved everything out, you can go back with your landlord and your landlord can be like, oh, this wasn't here when I moved in. And then at the end of that meeting, they have to make a list of all of the things that they're going to charge you for. And then if you disagree with what they're putting on the list, you just write on the bottom, I disagree, and then you can submit all the things that you think are wrong with the list. Then you can take it to general sessions court. But that's the process. And the landlords get out of it like this. If you schedule an appointment with them to do a walkthrough and then you don't make the appointment if something comes up, they're not required to make another appointment. So it's like a one shot, you do a walkthrough with your landlord, and then if you disagree with it, you sign it. If none of this happens and you want to challenge it later, you can. There are some forms, and it's pretty simple, just type an email or something and say, I'm interested in what you itemize, what all of the deductions, or how you're justifying keeping my security deposit. And then they would be required to send you a list of the items that they are charging you for, and then you can dispute that. So, I mean, there's some recourse, but it's just easier to do the walkthrough with your landlord.
So if they won't do the walkthrough, but they're not open to that.
They have to be under the law. Yeah, yeah. And you can just point them to whatever the security deposit one is. It's 6628-301, and you can find that online.